Alright guys, what's up? Welcome back to the podcast. Alright, I'm recording on a long drive. Driving back down to San Diego from LA. Got about 3 hours. It says 2 hours and 40 something minutes, and it says there's some kind of accident on the 5 causing like a 50 something minute delay. I'm like, oh gosh, whatever. So last night I didn't head out like I was going to. I was gonna leave LA. I'm headed to Black Pride in San Diego. It starts in 2 hours for the event tonight, but I'm not gonna make it in 2 hours. I wasn't really trying to make it in 2 hours anyways. But yeah, I basically am glad to be able to go. I'm glad to get up out of the house. Yeah, last night I was recording about just kind of situations when it comes to maybe like stressors with work and, you know, ego involved with work, to the tune of not necessarily like bad coworkers or anything like that, but just like ego as in like, you know, if people have situations like how it can be difficult to ask for time off when you know it's not for like an event, but it's kind of for self-care, or how it can be difficult to address it can be hard to address like work in general, like performance at work, that kind of thing. So I just think it's a lot. But I feel like it was worth recording. I just haven't yet posted it because I'm not sure if I really want to post that. Sometimes when I record stuff, I don't mind getting deep with stuff, but sometimes it's a little personal maybe, so I'm kind of like, I don't really know if I really want to be like all out there with like everything, so I'll sit on it a couple nights. I'm in no rush to post that. But, you know, I guess with some topics that come up for, you know, relevant to Pride, you know, it's Pride Month. Guys, it's June 25th. Pride Month is almost over. I remember in the month of May doing a couple, well, depending which podcast you listen to, you know, I did like a Pride boot camp kind of episode, and that went, well, it was a few episodes, you know, about like just kind of getting yourself into, you know, the spirit of things, you know, and, you know, trying to be your most proud, confident self, you know, by the time, you know, Pride season rolls around. So, you know, I liked posting that. I'd never really posted anything like that before, but it was pretty cool to be like, yo, like, this is kind of like what like a healthy lifestyle looks like. And, you know, we all know I've been changing a lot of stuff here and there, so it's been hard for me to kind of keep up a routine. But, you know, I'm getting back into a routine. It's just a challenge because it's been a while. It's just a challenge because it's been a lot of just back and forth. The driving, everything, you know, moving was just, it was a lot. So, you know, today, since I'm on my way to this festival, I want to kind of talk about, what I noticed when it comes to, what I noticed when it comes to, Pride season, LGBTQ plus type issues or concerns, and being able to talk about those types of concerns, and have people in your court that kind of like understand you on a good level. It's not always super easy, but I would say overall, when it comes to the black community in general, we've got so much happening as it is that I get the impression that the last thing most people are really trying to put at the forefront is being a minority, even more so, if it's not ethnic or gender, and then putting more gender diversity into the loop and putting sexuality into the loop. Race is personal, ethnicity is personal, where you're from, your culture, all that's personal. But, I think people the general population understands, if I was born in Russia, or if I was born in one of many places, like if I was born in Russia, if I was born in Ukraine, if I was born in anywhere pretty much, Chechnya, if I was born in Africa, in Zimbabwe, if I was born in in the US, if I was born in Compton, I feel like people kind of get that. But I feel like it's different when it comes to how you identify your sexuality, how a person identifies their gender, their preferences, and all sorts of things. I feel like we get to a place where it gets real different real quick, and oh my gosh, with these sirens, everybody's like moving out of the way. Can't tell if they're like turning or what. Okay, they're turning. Man, I was just watching it was going to be like the second or third time that I've crossed some sirens today. I just have to say, my family lives nearby a police station, and in the neighborhood where I'm from, there's definitely like a whole lot of, in the neighborhood where I'm from, there's definitely a whole lot of, I don't know if I want to call it concern, but there's definitely a lot of like, attention, towards like medical care, hospitals, that kind of thing, clinics. There's a lot of that in the city where I'm staying, and maybe that is what's contributing to there being so many sirens all over the place, everywhere. But I feel like that's maybe not the main thing. Like, I'm just kind of concerned that I see so many sirens and so much or I hear like so many sirens so often. Like, I was raised in the same house where I'm staying in now. I was raised there for so many years that I don't know, maybe I tuned it out, but I don't remember. I mean, I remember there were days where I didn't hear sirens like at all. It was like a rare thing to hear sirens. And even though we're near a fire station, it's not always the fire station that, it's like ambulances coming by, mostly ambulances, paramedics, and things like that. And, I've never witnessed that before. I mean, yeah, it's LA, like there's a lot that you just kind of expect from the city that, things just happen. You're not really in the kind of city to be like, oh, this isn't like normal. But the amount that I've been hearing, and I've been around for maybe like a month, and I'm noticing it like way more than ever that I've never noticed it before. I'll put it that way. Like, we've always lived that fire station was always there even before my parents got the house. I recall the person who was selling it, I remember she was this chatty lady, and she was, giving us a tour around, and I remember her telling my parents that one of her kids had asthma, and like it was such a close fire station that the other son, when the one with the asthma attacks would have some issues and complications, the one son would just run over there and get them to come over to the house to help. And so that was something that I was just like, okay, I get it, but yeah, like I never really noticed. Like, I'm not saying that we never had, emergency people coming, or like, there was never like emergencies or anything, but I'm just saying, like, the amount that I hear just within the last like month or so is a lot more than what I ever remember hearing. And that's, I've visited in between, and this is the most that I ever remember, just like sirens. I notice it too because I'm after work and stuff, I'm like recording on this podcast, and then I'm like, okay, like here comes another siren, okay, here comes another this or another that. It just feels so different from what I remember. I don't remember it being so heavy on the sirens and stuff. But again, this is LA, but I mean, like, I'm still like, it's just not, this is maybe the new normal. I don't know. But yeah, but getting back to what I was trying to say, when it comes to LGBT concerns in the black community, it's so complex, like I feel like people already don't consider or think about sexuality and gender in the same way they think about, your race or your ethnicity or something like that. Like, what I'm trying to say is, like, you can be born with certain things, and even if people are prejudiced against you and don't like you because of your race or your ethnicity, they seem to kind of understand that, okay, this is just where you're from, this is your culture, this is where you're from, this is how you're gonna look. People tend to understand that. But when it comes to like LGBTQ plus culture, queer culture, people who are non-binary, people who identify as studs or stems or even femmes, or if you have any kind of identity pretty much, and put a label to it, that's already, in quotes, kind of other. I feel like cis straight people don't really call themselves cis straight people. They don't really say, oh, I'm cis, or oh, I'm, like, they'll say they're straight. Like I've mentioned before, I've had, a couple ladies tell me that they were straight without me, without it being provoked. Like, I never asked. I was just like, they happened to be in a gay bar as a group of my friends, with a group of their friends that we shared the same friends, and then they were just like talking and mentioned that, and I just was like, okay, like, thanks for sharing with me that you're straight, like, okay, like, I don't know why they felt compelled to tell me, I wasn't interested anyways, but I think that they assumed because I was talking to them that I was interested, and I think that's already a problem in itself. But I mean, like, because it's just, I don't know, it comes across as rude to me for someone to just be like, I'm straight. It's like, okay, like, I feel like the default is almost that, the majority of the people that you tend to meet are likely going to be straight people. So I don't know why they would feel the need to, like, tell you. And I'm not flirty. I don't hit on people like that. I'm not, like, a flirty kind of person. I'm sociable, but I'm also really shy. But, like, if you're a friend of my friend, and we're at, like, a club or a bar or something, I'm likely going to talk to you. Like, especially if I've had a drink or two, I'm likely going to feel comfortable enough to just be like, hey, what's up? Like, you're sitting right next to me. I'm not going to, like, completely avoid you. But I don't know, when it comes to, so some of my friends had some of my LGBT friends have had different reactions to Black Pride, like, and so I have some friends that I don't even know if they're gay, straight, whatever. I know that they are in a cis relationship, male female dating relationship, but I don't really know other than that, like, how they identify or anything. But they've never done or said anything. I've even seen people flirting with them and they've never been, like, put off by it or whatever. Like, they're never, like, rude. So at the least they're very, like, aware of and open-minded, but they might actually be part of the community, but I don't really know. I mean, they're definitely allies at the least, and I don't want to say at least because that sounds like it's like a less than kind of thing. Like, I'm just saying, like, I don't know how else to word it, like, but they're definitely allies, and so that's comforting. And then I've had other friends who are white friends that, I mean, we've never really not gotten along about, like, racial stuff. Like, we talk about race and, like, I'm comfortable around them as a Black person, being around them. Like, they're into things related to Black culture, but they've never really been, like, overtly too open about like too much. Like, I've had a friend that was from Mexico mentioning how they don't really have the same opportunities as far as, like, education, because they'd be considered an international student, and they, because of their citizenship, they don't have the same rights to school and funding for education and stuff like that, and it's super expensive, I understand. And so it's like, that does also impact their opportunities for work and stuff like that, and I do understand that. I'm not, and it's something that, interestingly enough, as many people as I know that are international students, or that were international students, or that were on a student visa, or I have family members that were on a student visa. My dad came to the U.S. and was not a citizen, and went and studied in the U.S. as an adult, and things like that. So I it's just kind of some other minority status that's interesting to me, that I don't really know what to do about, because it really does put people at somewhat of a disadvantage. Like, it ultimately what people's education is, and how much they make isn't like something that's really gonna deter me from really like hanging out with them or being friends with them. Like, I've had friends who were homeless, who didn't have a place to be, who didn't have stable housing, who didn't have work. I've had friends in all kinds of different situations, and so I'm not usually too hung up on that kind of stuff. I mean, I'm just saying that they weren't these people aren't not everybody's able to really have the options that they want to have. I guess I'll put it that way. Like, that's what seems more concerning about it, is that if a person wanted to go to school and wanted to have those options, and they if they're not a citizen, then their life is going to look a lot different. And this is people that are potentially, they could be white passing, but also they're queer people, and so and then gender presentation wise, they might not look like a stereotypical cisgender looking type of person and that kind of thing. So it's like, I know that people get harassed and accosted and approached, and just, it's weird out there. It's really weird out there. And when we start looking at black people, African American people, I mean, you can be black and not African American, and you can be African American and not really consider yourself black necessarily, but for the most part, unless you're wearing some kind of traditional garb or have any specific features, because some people from different parts of Africa do have like some specific type of features that makes them look a certain way. Like there was someone that I was kind of going out with for a little bit that she almost looked like she was one of those people from, she looked like she could have been from like the Himba tribe. Like, she kind of had that kind of look to her, but she wasn't from there. But at least to her knowledge, she wasn't. Like, I don't know if she knew like if she had African heritage or what. But yeah, there are people from like the Caribbean, people in like South America, people in Central America, people in Mexico, that are black people, and all over the world. But I mean, like, a lot of people trace their origins not necessarily always just to Africa, and a lot of people who are African Americans, I don't know the percentage, but it's not uncommon to come across people who can't really track their lineage past slavery. I think that's a big deal. It's a big deal, It's a big deal to have your narrative begin with slavery and then just unknown before that. Like, with DNA and everything, like, we can kind of know more about like origins, but it's like people might not know their family names or specific tribal history and things like this. And so most cultures don't have that as part of their narrative. Most people might not know, a lot of their heritage and like their great grand this or that, like where they were from and how these people came over to this part of the world and who was fighting or marrying and having kids with whom, and all this kind of thing. Like, a lot of people don't go that in depth into their own narratives, but for those who want to, a lot of people can. For for Black Americans, a lot of Black Americans cannot go into their history past where it's documented. I don't think it was documented everywhere or anywhere. I mean, I could be wrong. There might be documentation somewhere of slaves or some slaves and their names and where they were from and all this. Some kind of a system of like categorizing or something. That's something I don't know, and I would totally have to look into this. But I don't really even know. I really don't know. I really just don't know. I don't know what else to say. But I really just don't know. I don't really know if it's possible or if it's common or likely that there are people who are kind of on the same page with that kind of stuff. So that's something that I'm trying to kind of understand more and more. But I don't really know. I mean, like I've talked about this before, but even my family's native tribal language from my dad's side, there weren't even any like books or online resources, even from Zimbabwe's bookstores, and like when I used to search when I was in like high school and early college age, I used to look for language books. I'm really good with languages and things like that, and I used to look for language books on how to learn this, how to say that. I was really good with Spanish, and I was able to use Spanish because, living in Southern California, you have plenty of opportunities to use Spanish. There are plenty of people who speak Spanish. There are plenty of people who don't mind speaking Spanish with you, even if you suck at speaking Spanish. So I was lucky to be able to just like dive in, and then went to Mexico quite a few times and was able to be there for like 10-day periods, like trying to speak Spanish to like local people and stuff. And it was a good time. And I think when it comes to language, nowadays with YouTube, you can learn so much. With the internet, there are so many people posting so much free content. Like, I even remember growing up, there was a point where I don't think my grandparents ever got internet, but there was a point when people didn't really have internet, Wi-Fi, computers, cell phones. They only had landlines. And this was after phones were even more popular. I feel like once the smartphone became a little more popular, and then it started becoming more available to people around the world. But yeah, my grandparents, I don't recall if they had a phone or not of their own, like a landline phone, but they didn't speak English, and so because my dad's kind of a distant guy, and so he's not really the person who would be like patient enough to teach you a language, or wanting to kind of like spend that much energy in teaching a language to you. And also, he's not patient enough to for someone to be comfortable as his student. Like, he's very impatient and grumpy and grouchy and irritable, and kind of just like, he just doesn't have patience. He's a good teacher, but just the moodiness that comes with the way he treats people, and especially if he's not doing it for like a professional reason. Like, when it comes to like family and stuff, he has a really short fuse. And so my dad is fluent, but he also never really taught us a lot. He taught us like a little bit when we were like young, and then we learned more as we had like cousins that were like immigrating and starting college and school and stuff. They were coming to the U.S., and we learned from them and from aunts and uncles, well, mostly aunts, I don't think I had a lot of uncles that stayed over at our house, but we had some aunts that came through. And they wouldn't stay for like a day or two. They would stay for like multiple weeks, maybe a couple months, just to settle in and like have a like transitional point so that they kind of got used to the culture, used to the food, used to how to shop and stuff. And my mom would like take them around and like everything. But a lot of them, these were people who already knew English. But you know, in the house, like they weren't always speaking English. And so like that was the best way to learn. And outside of that, you know, once everybody who was going to come over kind of settled and came and already had all come over, we kind of don't really talk too much anymore, like not in English, and so it's just not an easy language to learn. But on my end, I feel very blessed and lucky that I do know the language. I know about it. I know, you know, I have access to people who know like the history. You know, I do have like some connection to a background of non-enslaved background, and so that to me is very valuable. And I don't think I don't want this to come across as me sounding like I think I'm better than anybody or worse than anybody, or you know, I just know it's different. It's a difference that you don't really tend to see a lot. Like, and I know that my parents got shit for getting married. Like I saw my, and I often refer to my parents as African because I feel like the strongest force that we were raised in the household was like African culture. I mean, my mom was born in the U.S., so I'm not really trying to erase that culture. I mean, I'm clearly American too. I was raised in the U.S. I consider myself Black and African American. I will always say both. But people don't look at me and see both. When people look at me, they mostly, you know, hear that I don't have an accent from some other country, and unless they see my last name, which isn't like fully noticeable as an African name. I mean, it's definitely not English, but it's not noticeable as an African name when it is an African name, though. But because it's got letters in like weird sequences that English doesn't have, like, you know, like in English, for example, you usually don't have like MZ together, or you usually don't have MH together, stuff like that. Like, so a lot of my family has names that are like that, and you know, my first name is just Grace, and then my last name is just, you know, I'm not gonna say it, but my last name is an African last name, but a lot of people don't really know what it is when they first see it, and a lot of people don't see my last name because I don't like post it all over the place or anything. Like, I'm proud of it, but like I like my privacy too. And then you know, I often notice that, you know, people aren't they're not like how do I say this? Like, yeah, I'm not trying to say that because I, you know, have a heritage that's not fully, you know, slavery on both sides of my parents' families, that I don't think I'm better than anybody. I really don't think I'm better than anybody. I'm just saying that's part of my story. And what I was trying to say is, like, my parents got shit for marrying each other. Like, you wouldn't think that there's like prejudice and racism with Black people, but my mom said that like she had some family members saying like, oh, you can't trust Black people, and there was some like, I mean, not Black people, but you can't trust Africans, and like they're a whole different culture, and like, you know, they had some prejudice ideas that like somebody was gonna like expect you to be their slave, and like they you know, kind of, I don't remember how to word this idea, how there was this idea in my mom's side of the family that the Black Africans were the ones who sold some of their people into slavery too, And so there was some resentment towards, my dad as someone being from an African country, that like how could, and it wasn't even specifically like, oh, like we're with the same background, even like it wasn't even like noticeable backgrounds and stuff like that like, oh, we know that we were from the same tribe or whatever. It was, there was nothing like that. It was just Africans in general, right? And Africa is huge. Like, it's so many countries. Like, in North America, we just have like Canada and the US and Mexico, and then it goes into Central America, and then we still have, like, I guess, like, there's Alaska, there's Hawaii, and there's territories. Those aren't like attached to like the mainland US, but yeah, like North America only has like a little bit. It doesn't have like a whole lot of countries like Africa has. Africa has a whole load of countries, and so who knows, and who knows who is how related to who. But yeah, to hear family members saying stuff like that is, I mean, they've never said that to me, and I've never had them treat me oddly or badly because of having a dad from another country. But they, they're from the Midwest, and they were also kind of just like, yo, like, when you think of it, like almost 40 something years ago, like that was a bigger deal. The town that my mom was from, like, they barely got a Catholic church within a drivable distance within my lifetime. And so, I don't think they have any synagogues. They don't have any mosques. Like, it's like they're very, everybody's kind of the same accord, even though there is diversity with race and that kind of thing. Like, in that part, there's not a whole lot of diversity, and there is kind of this outsider mentality, like, you're not from this town. Like, even when me and my sister went there for, I think it was for my great grandma's 100th birthday. We were there in town, and I think it was near 4th of July as well. I think so. I think it was the same time period. And we stayed for the 4th of July too. And I remember when me and my sister were just trying to take a walk. And this is a small town of 3,000 people. I think they count 3,000 with the prison, maybe. I don't really know. That's what I've heard. There's some debate if it's 3,000 with the prison or 3,000 without the prison. And so it's a very, very, very small town. And me and my sister were walking around, and more than once, people stopped their car and asked us who we were or where we were from or whatever. And we just, we were there. Like, people knew my grandma and my great grandma and stuff like that. And so they knew like which family. So I just said their last name. And, it's kind of interesting too, even growing up. And it's an American last name. But it's kind of interesting even growing up. When I was there, I lived in the Midwest for like the first 5 years of my life, and during those last like 1 or 2 years or so, I'm not sure the exact timeline, but I was being raised by like two of my aunts who lived with each other, their sisters, and they were kind of taking care of me. One of them was more in charge of watching me and my brother, and then the other one was more in charge of not just watching me, but like, I guess it was her house technically, so we lived at her house. All of us lived at her house, and so I remember back then they used to call me by, like, they'll say, like, when they get mad at you, they say your whole name. They say like Grace, da 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 da. They'll say like your whole name to like call you over, meaning like this is serious, like come here now kind of thing. And so they would call me by the last name of my mom's last name, And now I don't know if it's because maybe they were embarrassed to try to pronounce the last name from my dad's side, but I mean, clearly I was my parents' child, so I have my dad's last name. And so it was just interesting because I remember that still even clearly. My certain aunts would call me, they'd be like, oh, you're one of us, you're one of our family, you're this, like, say if the last name was like Smith or something like that, which it wasn't, but say if that was the last name, they'll be like, you're a Smith, like that. And it's like, I'm not, like well, I am partially, but I'm not, like, that's not my last name, you know what I mean? So it was kind of interesting. And then I was also raised with my dad calling me like an African first name that I wasn't given. It's not my birth name, but I answer to it. Like, I'm used to being called that, but it's not my name. But I just find that kind of thing interesting. And yeah, so even when my parents got married, they got married at a I've seen pictures, it looks like a chapel. They didn't have like gowns and suits and tux and all that kind of stuff. It was my grandma and one of my aunts, the one who I said, like, I lived at her house with the other aunt and my brother. She had kids too. She had like a son and a daughter, and so but they were older, and we didn't really like hang out with them. Even though I really loved my cousins when I was younger, I looked up to them and I always wanted to be around them. But they kind of just like didn't really take too much time to be like around and stuff. Like, they were just kind of living their own lives. So I never remember being like playing with them too much or anything. Even though I really wanted to, I liked being around them, but. Yeah, I don't remember, I really don't remember ever being, like, what am I trying to say? Like, I don't remember being, like, any prejudice necessarily that I heard firsthand, but just like from what my mom told me. And then my dad's never told me anything about prejudice from the other side of the family. And then if you look at the picture from when they got married, it was like at a chapel or something, and it was just my grandma and my mom's oldest sister, and there wasn't anybody else from the family who went. And I'm just kind of like, that's weird to me. Because, I mean, especially if it's at a chapel, it's like such a casual thing. Like, you can just pop in. You don't need, like maybe they did it at a time of day when nobody really was available. But it's like, I doubt that. They probably invited a bunch of people. None of my dad's family was there. I mean, they didn't really have, like, a big ceremony or anything. I know they weren't like rolling in money or anything, but still, like, I don't think that they did it like at a church. It didn't look like a church that I had recognized. It looked like it was either like a courthouse or like a chapel at a courthouse or something like that. I don't really know. So, and that's fine. I mean, it's fine for people to do that, but it's just surprising to me that like nobody showed up at the wedding hardly. And so it's kind of like, in my head, I'm like, I kind of know where the main support was early on, because this was before I was even born, and I'm looking at pictures where it's like nobody came to the wedding, and then there's like, I wasn't even born yet, so I can tell that my mom's oldest sister kind of isn't like the most on the very prejudiced side, and neither was my grandma. And I never really got an impression from them that there was like nobody's really overtly on my mom's side been like really prejudiced. On my dad's side, I've had a cousin, just one cousin, I think, that that cousin has a problem with everybody, so I'm not even going to really take that into consideration, because that cousin, I mean, I've heard a rumor that people say that people are kind of like scared of that person, and that person kind of tends to, you know, step on people's toes and kind of like go out of their way to kind of like bully people. And so, you know, and I keep my distance. I don't, you know, I remember once, you know, they were trying to get me in trouble before, and I remember another time they were trying to, like, I remember they were with their younger sister, and, you know, I think I was gonna drive them somewhere. I can't remember. We were like standing out in the driveway, and the one cousin, the problematic one, started talking to the other cousin, saying things, and just kind of like mumbled some stuff, and, you know, didn't really, you know, was talking about, I think I had acne or something like that, and I was like a teenager or something, and I'm pretty sure I had acne or something, and I remember, I could tell what she was saying, even though I couldn't understand word for word, but I just told her, I was like, I understand what you're saying, you know, and, you know, they were looking kind of like embarrassed about that, and I was just kind of like, wow, because this was like one of the first times I'd ever really met with them or like hung out with them or anything, and I haven't had a lot of interactions. There was another time when I was talking to this person, or they were talking to me, and, you know, we're kind of mentioning some things about my parents and stuff like that, and, you know, like, kind of not directly about my parents, but I could tell they were kind of trying to like talk about a situation that happened between them and my parents that had nothing to do with me at all, that my dad had told me about, like, once we were there it was like at a wedding. And so once we were at the wedding, my dad's like, hey, this thing's been going on. It's like, okay. And then like that cousin brought it up, like stuff like that, where it's like, whatever, like, we're not really involved with each other enough for me to even really think about it really mattering. But yeah, I wouldn't say that I've experienced too much prejudice other than that person that's problematic. And then otherwise, I haven't really had like a lot of people in my family saying too much stuff, but I can tell that there is some prejudice thinking against Americans. There is some prejudice thinking against Africans, and so it's just kind of an interesting dynamic to be a part of. And as a black person, it's like, okay, like, black people can still hate on black people, and I think that's something that a lot of cultures maybe don't realize, is that, you know, it's still considered like an inter-ethnic marriage, you know, like, it's definitely two completely separate cultures, but with a lot of values similar. I'd say one thing on my dad's end that he values more as like something that he overtly talks about, that his side of the family overtly speaks about more so than my mom's side, is they're very like business oriented and very like education oriented. I feel like on my mom's side, people are kind of fine, you know, just like go to school, go to high school, get your diploma, get work, and call it a day. That's fine, you know. Like on my dad's side, it's like, you know, you have opportunities to get higher degrees, so why not go for it? You know, like, it's, you know, sky's the limit kind of thing, and he would be like more likely to push that kind of thinking of like, you know, don't think small, kind of like think about, you know, you can make six figures, and like that's kind of his mentality of like, you know, making more money and being more financially set. I don't really get that impression from my mom's side, and it's fine, you know. I'm just saying that's a big difference, that my dad's side kind of, I wouldn't say they're chasing riches, but they're definitely a different mindset of like, that's why a lot of them were coming to the U.S. was because, you know, of the opportunities to get education and, you know, start better career options and things in this country. And so, and they, you know, they all are living in places where it's, you know, lower cost rent, and so they've had like bigger houses and bigger everything, and the level of success, you know, being able to like have their parents live with them or get their parents their own place or whatever that may look like, and so that's definitely a difference that I noticed between my parents, and you know, I don't know if I mean, there's some prejudice on my parents' side too when it comes to racial dating topics. I mean, my parents always say like, you know, they want us to marry like African princes and princesses, and it's kind of like, I don't know where they expect these people to come from, you know, because where I live, I've never met any, and also they kind of expect us to be a little more traditionally like how an African kid would you know, take on certain responsibilities and all these kind of things. They kind of see things like that, like, this is your responsibility, this is your you know, your role, and they're very, you know, there's a lot of expectations that you have based on whatever's going on, basically. But I feel like my mom's side's more like, you know, everybody just does their American things. But yeah, I would say in my household, I was kind of raised with a slight amount of prejudice. I remember it didn't really hit me much until a later grade. I think I was in like 7th grade, 8th grade or so when I started, you know, thinking I was like cool using like curse words, swear words, talking about black people this, white people that, and I know it made some people uncomfortable, but I never really knew to stop, you know, and nobody really said too much about it. I was never like overtly racist towards like my friends, but I would be like at the lunch tables, for example, and this is like a Christian private school, and I'd be with my minority friends, and we'd be like talking shit about like, oh, like white people are mean, or white people are, you know, this or that. And then like I remember only once the pastor's oldest daughter, who was in my grade, she was white, and she was just like, you guys, like, you know, she kind of like said it like that. But otherwise, you know, and then I used to think, I had a teacher that I used to think was racist, and I remember telling my dad that I thought she was racist, and he was just kind of like, it's good that you guys are thinking about these topics, but that's not what racism looks like, you know. But I did kind of think that she kind of didn't like me because of my race, but I also was a troublemaker a little bit. Not really a troublemaker, but I was like a little bit like, you know, rowdy, and like, you know, I wasn't paying attention in her class, and it was like me and my brother and like a couple other guys who were minorities, like they were like Latino dudes and a couple other guys, because I felt like, you know, that's how we're like, based on like, I don't know if it was the media or what, but like I used to only watch like BET, like that was not only, but like that was something I gravitated towards. But I was never really raised in a neighborhood that had a lot of black people, didn't go to like a predominantly black school, and so, you know, I wasn't really raised around a lot of people like culturally that looked like me or who were from the same backgrounds. And so, you know, I kind of thought that, you know, I wanted to be a rapper, and I need to be good at basketball, and I need to be like, you know, like the gay stuff wasn't even like on my radar back then too much. I wasn't even really thinking about dating and stuff. you know, I wasn't really too concerned with a lot of those kinds of things. And so I remember just kind of being like kind of like happy to be myself. But you know, I didn't really, I mean, looking back I can tell I was a bit obnoxious, but I don't think I was really racist, because I had a lot of friends that were white, and there wasn't like any specific white person like picking on me. Like, I was around so many white people, and I don't think I had like experiences directly from the people I was with all the time, like mostly through church and through the school and sports and stuff, that I had picking on me. But I just knew that I gravitated more towards like other black students and Latinos, because we were definitely minorities. And I had a lot of Asian friends too. But somehow back then I knew that, you know, they were kind of usually going to be getting seen in like a good light, and we were going to be getting seen in like a bad light. And it was regardless kind of what we were doing. And so, but I also kind of played into it as well. Like, I kind of like was a little disruptive in class sometimes and wasn't paying attention, and like was kind of like cracking jokes on people and stuff. Like, I was nice. Like, I was never like mean to anybody, but I was also not like really sensitive, and I wasn't being like my true self. I was just kind of like trying to like make an impression and like kind of be like a little bit of a badass, but not really. You know, I would be sarcastic with people and stuff like that, but like I was never really like mean. I was still friends with everybody. I could pop into any group and nobody would be like walking away from me or like making fun of me or like saying anything bad about me. Like, I was never like openly mean to anybody, but I did say things that were just insensitive and stupid, basically, about white people. And I don't even know if I believed it, but it was kind of like ideas that I got from media and impressions that I got just from certain things. And I did have some people that used to watch after us that were like, I guess, babysitters, I guess you would call them. But we weren't like children. It's just where we lived. Like, you know, in LA, you don't really leave your kids at home like that if you don't need to. Like, my parents weren't like comfortable with it, and they were taking night classes. Or my dad was working late and my mom was taking night classes, and so like my dad would get home around 8 or 9 p.m. and so like they weren't comfortable with us being alone in the house, even though it was me and my brother and then like our younger sister. And my younger sister was a lot younger back then, so we had two of the people from the church that were these females that were family friends. They would stay with us, it was like a couple nights a week, and my mom would prepare dinner before she had to go to class. It was like a lot. Like, basically, they were there all the time. And I remember, you know, around that time when I was always talking about like black people or white people, this and this and that, I was around them and I was talking about like, you know, black people, white people, this and this and that. And I remember saying like, I hate white people. And then, you know, they were like mixed. I think they're from a Central American country, and one of their parents is Spanish speaking, Latina, and I guess would consider herself white. And their dad is, you know, he would consider himself black. And, you know, they met in this country, and not this country, but in their home country, and got married and had them as kids. And so, you know, I never really thought about it that way, because they lived in a very black neighborhood. You know, they used to like joke with us and like tease us and say that we were like whitewashed and that kind of thing. But then, you know, like I kind of looked up to them because of the neighborhood they lived in, and like learned a lot about black culture being around them. And we would sit around and watch like music videos and TV shows with them, and like, you know, play basketball and stuff. And we would be very involved in like, you know, stuff that was more stereotypically black than the other stuff I would usually be doing with kids from the other school. And so, you know, but then they kind of let us know that like, yeah, you might look black, but you're still different than us. And so I thought it was maybe like a safe space to be like hating on white people around them. But they were just kind of like, oh, do you hate my mom? Like, she's white. And I'm like, I don't hate your mom. Like, that was like the first time I ever really kind of like thought about what I was saying. Because I was like, I don't hate your mom. Like, I have nothing against your mom, you know. And like, she'd never done anything to me that was wrong or mean or anything. She's been nothing but kind. Back then she didn't speak English at all, and so she'd always come up to me and speak Spanish and like say all kinds of nice, cute little things, and like I didn't really know what she was saying, but she was nothing but nice. And so I had really no real reason to say that. And I, you know, and we had a neighbor kid that was, his family was from Argentina, and they would always tease him and be like, oh, that little white boy. And then I remember him overhearing it and him being like, well, you know, I'm not just white, and like I speak Spanish, and like all this kind of stuff. So there were always kind of these like little odd like racial dynamics that I was like raised around. And like I mentioned, like my parents aren't completely unprejudiced people. Like I've never heard my dad comment about like the race of anybody being dated. It's more my mom that kind of says stuff like that. And there's always this kind of not so funny joke that she likes to say, we're gonna send you guys to Africa and marry you off, kind of thing. And like she's just saying stupid crap, but it's so like, it's like, first of all, I'm not straight, so who are you gonna try to marry me off to in Africa? And she keeps on saying like this African prince kind of thing, and I'm like, what prince? Like there is no prince that you guys know. And like it's annoying. I get annoyed by it because I think it's like weird and strange. But she says it to my sister too, because my sister, you know, she dates a white guy, and it's fine. I'm like, well, as long as they're happy, I don't really care. But my mom, I mean, to anybody's face, she never says anything. But then, like, you know, at home, she'll kind of be like, oh, I don't want her marrying into this, like, white family. Like, she'll say it, like, a little bit, but I don't really think she means it. And then she'll be like, you know, I hear things like, I used to be raised with the idea of, like, if you can't share a comb with somebody, then you shouldn't marry them, kind of thing. I'm like, to me, it's just kind of like, I know that I've said things and that things have come out of my mouth, but I don't think I really actually believed them. And I still get those kind of messages a little bit here and there. But even though, like, you know, I have cousins that are white. I have uncles that are white. I have aunts that are white. I have, you know, like people who have intermarried into our family that are white. I have cousins that have been born that are like half white and half black. And, you know, I don't really think about it too much like that, but I know that there is definitely racism, there is definitely prejudice, it does exist. I would say my family doesn't really say anything too far out of the norm, but they also don't challenge the kind of ignorant things that people kind of say. It's just kind of like, I feel like it's ignorant talk, but nobody's backing it up with actual actions. So I guess to that extent, I mean, I still don't think it's okay, but to that extent, it's like, okay, like, people will say dumb shit, you know? And so, I mean, those are things that I would say I'm not, like, proud of. Like, if I had friends come over and my parents started, like, spouting out some weird stuff about, like, white people, I'd be like, oh my God, like, stop, you know? But it's like, yeah, we never, like, I don't really think, you know, I wouldn't consider myself a racist person. Like, I notice when people don't understand something that's going on with me because I'm black and because they're white. And I understand when there's like a, you know, and that does happen a bit, but not like so much that it's a problem. Like usually we're just having fun and partying. We're not really like in the whole race thing, but it does have to come up, you know. And so with this Black Pride event. I mean, that's my whole freaking family history. But with this Black Pride event, I don't really know which of my friends who aren't black. I mean, I have a couple Latino friends who are joining or want to join or said they would join or whatever. We'll see what actually happens. But I don't really know who is actually going to come that's not black. And I did get the impression that, you know, one of my friends said they wanted to go because I told them I might be in town for that. And then, like, a couple weeks later, they were like, I don't know, it might not be, you know, I don't want to, like, step on somebody else's safe space because I'm white. And I was like, yeah, good point. But, like, I didn't really think about it. I was like, I don't really know what to say. And then, so I don't really know. I didn't really know what to say, but it might also be like a discomfort. Like, I get it. But I'm also kind of like, I wonder if, I mean, this is just a question I want to ask out loud. Is just, I wonder if white people think, like, okay, so let me think about this. Let me talk about it this way. The club that I'm going to is usually mostly white guys. Usually, right? That's normal for this city. This is like a normal thing. And so, you know, I'm usually, as a black female, I'm usually not, there usually aren't a whole lot of us up in there. Like, there's some, but there aren't like a whole lot of us up in there. But I never feel unwelcome because I'm black. I'll put it that way. Now in other settings, especially because it's like, okay, well, I'm clearly, you know, I try to give off the best gay vibes I can possibly give when I'm there. And so, you know, I dress the way that I'm comfortable when I go there. I'm comfortable in myself when I'm there, regardless of what race of people are going to be showing up. So that's usually been my experience with that venue. But when it comes to like other stuff with race, you know, I wonder for white people out there, like, do they think about this in the same way that I'm thinking about it? Like, when it's a Black Pride event, do they think, oh, I'm going to be the minority there, so it's a little bit uncomfortable? Is that the mindset? Because I mean, even I think it's if that is the mindset, it's interesting. Because I think a lot of times maybe a lot of white people don't have to think like that. They don't get opportunities where they think like that. I think they just go and they go where they're gonna go. They shop where they're gonna shop. They go, you know, especially in the gay scenes. Usually it's gay white males, and they're usually welcome with every event anyways. Even if it's like Latin night, you're still gonna see gay white guys there. Like, they're always there, and it's fine. I'm not saying they shouldn't be there. I'm just saying, I just wonder, it's just a question that I have. Is it something that white people don't think about too often if they're going to be in a space where they're going to be the minority? And I wonder, you know, is what that's like, because I do know that it can be uncomfortable for white people to be around black people in black spaces. A lot of times, you know, they might feel like someone's going to say something to them or be offended by their presence there, and they're not comfortable. And I get that. And, you know, I don't think it's okay to have like an event that's, you know, supposed to be inclusive, and then have people feel like I can't really walk in the door because somebody might say something or look at me weird or do something. But then also, I'm not saying they would deserve that. I don't think white people would deserve that from black people or anything like that. I don't think that's okay for people to just be like, acting that way towards others. I mean, I feel like if there's a white person in a black space, they want to be there. They made the effort to go there, and especially if they're not there stepping on toes or protesting something or being like weird in some way against black people, then I don't really think their presence should be considered threatening, like as an issue, even though I know that sometimes people feel like I can't really be my comfortable authentic self as a black person when I'm around other white people, and that's a thing too. But I do also think that if there was something that was happening that was racial exclusion or racial, hatred in a space where it's like, okay, other LGBT non-black people want to be here too. Like, is it okay for them to go? And I don't really know what to say. I never really know what to say. I don't mind it, but who am I also? I mean, I know there are people who would mind it, and so I don't really know what to say. But I would just say, and I don't want this to come off as like mean towards white people, because I don't think they deserve to be treated badly just because they're white. That doesn't make any sense to me. But also, I think when the roles are reversed, right? When it's a reversed situation, it's always important to pay attention to those reversed situations. A lot of times we get a lot of firsthand experience of things that we would not have been able to know about ourselves, about how other people see us, about what prejudice looks like, about what racism looks like, unless you've experienced it yourself. And I'm not saying white people don't experience racism, but I'm just thinking, okay, imagine, and I can't imagine being a white gay guy, but if I were a white gay guy, any gay space that I would go into, Hollywood, San Francisco, anywhere, even lesbian bars, I would be welcomed to go because I'm a gay white guy. I don't think other gay ethnic minorities feel similarly all the time. And so I do think it's just an interesting thing to look at. If a gay white person is considering, okay, say if it is appropriate for them to be there, then, I don't know if they would be considering it. I don't know if they would be considering what that's like, to be in a space where people look at you weird just because of your race, where people, are kind of chattering maybe strange little things because of your race, where people are kind of like maybe a little insensitive about the clothing you might even choose to wear because you're kind of choosing maybe, certain brands that are like from your culture, or certain, sneakers, or certain hairstyles, and certain stuff that, other people might look at it and be like, oh, like, like that's weird. And so I think too, when white people go into black spaces, I've never seen it with my eyes, but also I'll honestly say that I don't really have a lot of opportunities that I actively participate in going to a lot of black spaces. I mean, on occasion, I have hung out in Leimert Park on occasion. The Pandy has really altered a lot of the things that I socially would probably do, or a lot of the places I would go, because it's only now becoming more and more open, but like to go to physically be at those spaces. And so I've had a couple years of kind of like not really being too involved in some spaces that I've avoided, not because they're black spaces, but because I was avoiding everything pretty much. And then other than what was local, and what was the most local, easiest stuff to get to was never really like black related stuff so much. It wasn't necessarily white related stuff overtly, but it was like kind of the default was white. And so I just wonder, it's not possible for anybody to really understand fully anybody's experience, right? But sometimes something is almost about as close as it's gonna get. And so I do think that it's good to kind of challenge when that kind of stuff comes up. It's good to think about it. And of course, I would never want one of my white friends to feel uncomfortable, to feel in danger, to feel like, to have to break up an argument or break up a fight or have to be in the middle of some kind of ignorant kind of racial tension in a space that I love being in. I would never want that to have to happen. Like, we're there to party. We're not there to like be racist. We're there to celebrate that we're still alive, and as non-straight people or non-cis or as non-cis people or whatever, or as allies, we can celebrate that something worked, up to this point, that we're still able to kind of have an event where we can all walk in there. I don't think they're like excluding people by race at the door, like that's not a thing. And also, okay, so there's some things that are interesting that they put it, like this club usually has doors opening at like 10 p.m., right? And so it's interesting that they put this event to end at 9 p.m. So, and I mean, it is on a weekend day, but it's like also not during one of their prime club nights, right? And so I feel like there might be some not confusion, but some pressure on their end to be like, we don't want to take spaces away from the majority white guys to give them to the black gays. It's like, I kind of understand that too. And it's like, there aren't any black gay clubs in this area. This is the closest one to it, only because it has like two different rooms. So one room is a hip hop room. It's got like hip hop and like reggaeton and like other types of like ethnic music sometimes. And then the other room is usually like EDM, kind of pop EDM kind of DJs and stuff like that. And so they're usually going simultaneously. I don't know what the music's going to be tonight, but they're usually going simultaneously. So usually there are a lot more minorities in the room where it's like reggaeton, where it's like hip hop, R&B kind of music. Usually there's a lot more minorities in that section. But it's not separated like you can't go to the other side or whatever. It's not like that. Like, I've always considered it to be a safe space. And so I just hope that, I'm not worried that it's not going to be. These are the kinds of things that never really come up, when you're used to kind of hanging out in gay white male spaces. These kind of conversations aren't really happening. Most of the people I hang out with, other than there's like two white ladies, the rest of them are probably Latinas, and a few black people. And so I would say the majority of people I actually know are like Latinos and Latinas. They're not really, or Latinx people. I don't think the majority of the people I know are black, or the majority of people I know are white. And I'd say after the Latinx population, I know probably more white people. But I like hanging out with everybody. I really don't care. Like, I'm just ready to party and dance my ass off pretty much. And see my friends that I haven't seen in a while. Like I said, I've been cooped up since like June 15, and since June 5. I wish it was the 15th, because that would be closer, I wish it was the 15th. It's not the 15th. Yeah, it's just not something I'm cool with. But yeah, I'm gonna take a break from recording for now because I'm tired, and I've been recording for like over an hour, probably close to almost an hour and a half at this point, an hour 15, and then passing San Onofre, guys. If you guys like the Beach Boys, which I do, that Surfing USA song, but when they mention San Onofre, it's kind of funny. So, like, it's kind of interesting because I pass a lot of those places that they mention between like LA and San Diego. But yeah, I don't really know. I mean, there's a lot of complexities in the world right now with political stuff. I'm not here to really spout anger and hatred towards any group. There are a lot of complex questions that I think, are worth mentioning and talking about. And I think one thing that I appreciate so much, that I value so much with my white friends, this is something I really, really value. And I don't even know, I've never even brought it up with them, and I probably might when I talk to some of them tomorrow. But something I value so much is that we're actually able to address the elephant in the room, and we're actually able to talk about racial stuff. I mean, they don't really do anything that's like racially insensitive, not that I've noticed. They're actually very open-minded people, and willing to learn about stuff, and I'm willing to learn too. I wouldn't say I don't know a lot about white culture, though. I mean, I was raised around plenty of white people in plenty of white spaces, and I kind of get it. But I do notice that for the majority of the white people I know, they tend to not be in non-white spaces. But also, it's just kind of the nature of where we live. The majority of the places are white places. But I mean, there's still a lot of minorities there. But as it is with minorities, there can be multiple minority groups, but it doesn't make you the majority. Like, I feel like maybe overall the minorities as a whole, the minorities outnumber the Caucasian majority for sure. But as an individual group, there's always more white people in most of the spaces that I'm in. And it's not a problem. I'm just saying that's just the reality of where I live. I mean, I'm in Southern California. Like, when you're along the coast in Southern California, there's a lot of white people there. Like, that's just how it is. I mean, if you don't want to live where there's white people, then there's other places to live. I clearly don't care. But I do find so much value and so much blessing in being around people that, we can talk about this kind of stuff and not get to a space where we're not actually like able to have a conversation. Like, we're actually able to like have full-on deep conversations about race. I have friends that are able to like ask me questions, and they ask permission. They're not like popping off the rails and stuff. Like, they're, everybody's polite, respectful. Like, I can't think of anybody saying or doing anything racially insensitive towards me anytime recently, and not with these current friend groups. But they're still my people, and I would hate for any of my white friends to feel like they I don't know. I wouldn't want them to experience anything negative, but I do know that, with the climate of things, things get really tense. Not with my friend groups, but things get really tense out there. We got all this Roe versus Wade. We've got, a lot of LGBT people getting really scared that, okay, now we're going to start getting our rights taken away. If they can take that away from, like, cis people, or potentially pretty much. I don't know. When it comes to pregnancies and things, that's not just, like, a straight cis topic, but it's, like, that affects everybody. But it's, like, LGBT people have been kind of at the bottom of that conversation for so long. It's like people already saying you can't get married, people already saying you can't have a family or have kids or adopt or have equal rights in your household. If one of your spouses gets killed, and you might not have the rights to the money or whatever that looks like you might not get the rights, just aren't equal as it is for partnerships in gay relationships, at least not worldwide. And so and so I don't know, there's just so much going on right now. I mean, we just had Juneteenth was last weekend. It's like there's a lot happening, guys. There's a lot going on. And I don't want to make it seem like I'm unaware, but there's certainly a lot going on, and it's not always safe out there. And I think the hardest thing really, though, is having people to talk with about it, because it's like, if you can't talk about these things, they're never going to change. It's never going to get better if people can't talk about it. And I'm not here to, like, be offensive or anything. I mean, I'm just talking about my own experiences, my own perspective. I mean, I could put myself and my family on blast. I've said racist bullshit, I'm not, like, proud of it. I don't even believe it. I'm thankful that I was raised around a lot of white people, because I know that there are a lot of white people that are great people out there. There are a lot of black people that are great people out there. There are a lot of white people that are assholes. There are a lot of black people that are assholes. But there is a system, and there is privilege that, is kind of like at the forefront of a lot of things. But, when we interact on a personal level, it doesn't have to interfere with, like, everything we do. It doesn't have to interfere with a lot of things, but I know it's hard to not let it interfere with things. I know, like, I've had white friends who feel like, I mean, nobody I'm talking to, like, immediately, but, like, it's come up in the past that, like, why would a white person get passed over by a black person, to get hired or get into a school, they might get passed over by another, a minority person, because, they need diversity in the company. And so even, I understand that that's not cool either, to feel passed over, or to feel like, okay, I'm now getting put at a disadvantage because other people who are minorities are getting prioritized over me. I mean, like, I've never had that experience. I've had the opposite experience of feeling like, okay, like they're not going to let me into this space because they don't want a black one in here. Like, it's kind of like more like that, but I don't know. I mean, it goes all different directions, guys. Like, none of us are immune to any of this bullshit that comes with racism. None of us are immune to it. One of my favorite skits, oh my gosh, my favorite skit was the one with Dave Chappelle. I'm not, like, very well versed in things, but, like, it's with the Chappelle Show, where he starts talking about, the skit was, it's a spoiler for you guys. He's blind, and he's married to this woman who's blind, and I think he was blind from birth, and so he was raised around, in a neighborhood, in an area where, it was very prejudiced against black people. And so he developed a prejudice against black people, not knowing himself that he was black. and ends up becoming like of a high status in the KKK. And he has, there were people, I think there were people who were friends of his, like a white friend that was a seeing person who had no visual problems, and noticed that, Dave Chappelle's character, didn't notice that he was black himself. And then people were shielding him from knowing about it. And I think he wrote a book or something. And, this is as part of the skit. He wrote a book. And so he was going to go talk about, I guess, his book or give a speech at this, like, rally where there were, like, KKK members. And, he had the seeing person, encouraged him, why don't you wear like the KKK, the hood and all this stuff, so like people couldn't see your face, kind of thing. And then he was talking, and people were totally on board with him. Like everyone's like cheering and like excited and like down for the cause. And he was saying all this racist stuff against black people, and the crowd was all just like excited. And then they're all like, we want to see your face, we want to see your face, like, because he's talking in person, like giving a speech. We want to see your face. And he takes off the hood, and he is a black man saying all this racist crap against black people. And they didn't know he was a black man, because, he wrote a book, and so they didn't really, like, know him. I guess he didn't have any pictures on there. And then it was just that kind of thing. You can't even hardly talk about that kind of stuff and have it make any kind of sense. But yeah, it was just a very interesting skit, and that's one of my favorite skits ever, because it's like that's not really realistic. But I kind of see racism kind of like that. It's like if you were blind and nobody told you anything about your race, what would that experience be? You know what I mean? It's like, that would definitely be such a different experience if you were blind and nobody told you what your race was. Your experience in life would be so different from somebody who wasn't blind. So I just find it so intriguing to even think like that. It's like there's so many topics you can even talk on just from that. And it's like, there weren't even gay issues really brought up. It wasn't any other type of thing. It was just black and white kind of stuff. And even that alone is just such a complex skit, where it's like, you think about it and you're like, wow, really? Like, he was like, like, it's just kind of funny. I find that kind of thing to be funny, where it's like, okay, you got all these people believing in all these preachings that this person is saying, and that a black person could be racist against other black people. I think a lot of people might not notice that or think that. But like I was saying with my family, there's been a mild amount. I would consider it mild. Maybe it's not mild, but I would consider it, at least some amount. There's been some amount of like racism between like black Americans and black Africans. That I've witnessed and noticed, but it's never gotten like out of control. I know people got their feelings hurt by it, but it's never something that's been like an overt, like, current kind of ongoing thing. But yeah, that's just something I definitely noticed. And then yeah, like that. I'll end with that because I want to eat some lunch while I'm driving. I'm stuck in this stupid traffic like Camp Pendleton. I'm just so annoyed. But alright guys, thanks for listening.